Hi, and welcome to the Math Together show where thoughtful educators gather and learn together. I am Dr. Sue Looney.
I'm Heidi Subnani.
And I'm Molly Vokey. Thanks for being here with us today.
We are so glad that you've taken some time to be with us, and we are super excited to introduce our guest in a little bit. Today, we're going to be tackling such an important question. We're going to be talking about why it's important to foster equitable, inclusive classroom environments. And our guest has had quite a bit of experience with this and has some top tips for you to take away. So before we get to that, Heidi, you're going to talk us through a few announcements.
Absolutely. We are very glad that you are joining us here, either online or maybe you're watching later. You can always find us at looneymathconsulting.com if you are looking for some support in your classroom or in your district. We have the opportunity for you to set up short conversations with one of us if you have a question. So if you hit the contact us at Looney Math Consulting, we are happy to set up a little coffee chat with you. Additionally, we watch the comments during the show, and if you have a question or a comment, we try and get to that during the show. So please feel free to hit like or to ask your questions or your comments there, and we will, if we don't have a chance to get to them in the show, we'll try and get to them at some other time. So we're really excited today to have you join us, and thank you for being here.
Yes.
Awesome.
And I have the privilege of introducing our guest today. So we are going to be talking with Dr. Basil Marin, who is currently an assistant principal at Chamblee Charter High School in Atlanta, Georgia. His previous roles include alternative special education classroom teacher and lead behavioral specialist. In his current role, Dr. Marin is charged with leading the continuous school improvement process, Title I implementation, increasing family engagement and communication with ELL parents and students, ensuring best practices around student-centered instruction, and developing healthy student-teacher relationships with unconventional students. Dr. Marin has been an active member of the Emerging Leader cohort since 2017 and currently serves in the position of president for the ELAS-CD affiliate. You will often find him presenting at conferences speaking to his passions such as equity in education, social emotional learning, and whole child approaches to education. Dr. Marin is a recent graduate of the Old Dominion University in the Educational Leadership Program. Dr. Marin looks forward to connecting with like-minded individuals who are also passionate about disrupting the status quo.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. So let's bring him in.
Oh my goodness.
Hello. Hey.
Hello.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. We're so happy that you're here.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I was listening in the background. And I said, you got to be reading someone else's bio because it's so surreal to be hearing these things because this is the first show I've been on since I've graduated. So,
well,
yes,
let us congratulate you then. That's super exciting. And Heidi is going through a doctoral program right now. So we are very appreciative of the work that you had to do to achieve where you are today. So thank you for doing that.
Absolutely.
So our first question for you that we like to start off all of our guests so that we can get to know you a little bit is, what is your why? Why do you educate students? How did you get into this? And you have a very impressive bio, so I'm sure you have great stories to tell.
Okay. Well, thank you. What I'll say is I have to go back to my childhood, right? Both of my parents are from the country of Belize. And so pretty much, I was born in Los Angeles in California, but with having parents who are not from this country, it's hard to navigate an educational system, right? And so when we moved from California to the state of Virginia in second grade, I was reading on the kindergarten reading level. And so those academic deficiencies truly did follow me kind of all the way through elementary school. I had a reading specialist that would pull me outside of class. And, a lot of times during that time, I had started to have to really exhibit some behaviors because I wanted to be in a PE class, but now I'm having to sit in a room by myself and having to do some reading, right? The thing I hate to do the most in the world, right? And so that was hard for me to wrap my head around that. And so there were a lot of supports, but when you're a child, you don't really understand that, right? And then I went to middle school, and again, I still struggled with the academics, and then really got into high school, and I had a teacher in the 9th grade named Miss Kathy Sankson, who I always will pay homage to. She really, I was in the 9th grade remedial reading and writing class, so go figure, right? We talk about literacy. So now I'm in high school, and I would just say this was kind of the class of kind of like the rejects. I'm gonna be honest. This was a class they were like, hey, do something with these kids, kind of get them through. But like, we're gonna put all these, African American, like Latinx kids, males, in one classroom so the rest of the school can have a chance. That's really what that felt like to me. And it was, a white female, and so she really cared about us, right? And so being in that class, I would say I wasn't one of the toughest kids, but one of the paradigm things that happen in a classroom like that is the kids who are like me, who you would say would say the word soft, they actually try to impress other males in the classroom and really do things to kind of gear up their sense of respect. And so I started to do things and cuss at the teachers, and I would do certain things to be disrespectful. And then Miss Sankson would tell me like, hey, Basil, you come from a different cloth. You don't have to do what everyone else is doing, right? Or I know that your dad's a pastor, you're respectable, like you're a leader. Let's just use that in a different way. Now, I will tell you, she is my favorite teacher, but at the time she wasn't. Right. So I got to be very clear. At the time, I couldn't stand her. I couldn't do anything. I couldn't sneeze wrong. She was making a phone call home. It was bad. So it wasn't until, but you really worked with us and helped us, and really, and I would say it goes back, took time to build that relationship. I just remember she really cared about us and would do it's a small things you remember, right? How, literally how your teachers smelled. They gave you a hug when you came to the door. Those are the type of things you remember. And it wasn't you all until I was in my so in Virginia, you said you take the SOL for English in 11th grade. So it wasn't until 11th grade that SOL came, and you have to pass that obviously to graduate. And so I got myself together behaviorally, academically, and I passed that SOL. And I was in a regular English class when I've been in remedial classes my whole life. Okay. So she passed my classroom door one day, and I was like, wow, like if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't be here, and I wouldn't even have the glimpse of hope to maybe even graduate. And I went back to her classroom and paid homage to her and said, I really need you to know, like, you made a difference in my life. And so, so really at that point, then I was working at Boys and Girls Club after school program. I started, one thing you need to know is I started off at the Boys and Girls Club at age of 9. I felt like my dad dropped me off on the steps and said, please fix them, because I don't know what else to do. Right? So I started there at age 9, but I left the Boys and Girls Club as the director of the whole program.
Wow.
So the Boys and Girls Club had a huge development in me becoming the young man that I am and being respectful, and there'll be opportunities for me. And I'm not gonna lie, it became that because of my success, I kind of became their poster child. And so I would do, like, they had governors come in or whatever. I'd be speaking to them, talking about the development of myself and the Boys and Girls Club. So that had a huge impact on my life, and really. At that point, a mentor of mine in the program said, like, Basil, the kids that you deal with now, the knuckleheads you try to get together, like, they need you in the classroom, right? And so you'd really be able to make a difference in the classroom setting. So I started working at alternative school, and I was a para. That was my first job, as being a para. I had one kid, and so I worked with that one kid. But then that kind of evolved into me becoming a life skills teacher, me really liking what I was doing. But again, I'm working with the toughest kids in the city. This is alternative schools that have been kicked out of the public school system. Yeah. So I left that out every day. We were in restraints on the floor all the time. I'm chasing kids across the street. But that was really like the hard work that a public school teacher may never really face, right? So I was really in the trenches. And I realized, okay, I can't sustain this forever, but I do care about these kids, and I want to maybe help the kids on the public side before they even get to this alternative side, because once you're at alternative side, you're already marked and you're already labeled at that point. So then I really started to be like, how do I reach kids? How do I work with kids who maybe like myself, maybe again had been in alternative school, had not been, but they need someone to care about them. And I'll be honest, if we think about education, let's just talk about the facts. Black male educators are only 2% of the teaching force. Right. So essentially, I think the literature speaks to that white females are 80% of teaching force, but you're looking at a student population where it's very diverse. right?
Yeah.
And then also the other thing is that when you're looking at historically marginalized families, a lot of times, and again, I don't want to speak for always, but a lot of times come from a single mom home, grandma, auntie, and so there's a lot of female voice, a lot that they're getting, and then you get it at school, right? So how do we be a male role model and really be a stand-up guy for these children, let them know that it's a different path and it's a different way. So to try to sum it up, that was kind of my why. Like I started it because it was my journey, and then it became my mission to really to change lives of kids and to help them have a life that not necessarily that I have, but to give them a better option, let them know that it's there. I love the quote from Dr. Maya Angelou that says, "When you know better, you do better."
Yeah.
And a lot of times kids just need access to know, like, it's okay. It's something else out there, right? And you can use your mind to be your passport to get to whatever you want, but you got to get through the system that really, to me, is not made for historically marginalized kids. Fall through the cracks. I mean, we say we have all these systems in place, but are we truly, it goes to the question, are we truly fostering equitable opportunities in classroom for kids to be successful? And before, one of my good mentors, Principal Kefele, says, are we teaching Matthew, or are we teaching math? Right. And I heard them say that one time at a conference is, are we teaching math? Or are we teaching Matthew? And we got to learn our kids, know their names, know their issues, know what they are great at, and then be able to teach to their strengths.
Yeah, I feel like now more than ever, everything is wide open right now. Everyone can see the inequities that are happening or have been happening for a long time, but now they're just so blatant in your face.
Yes.
And so the things that you're talking about are so crucial. They were so crucial already, but now we have kids that are in their homes learning, and it's tough. It's really tough. So getting to know the kids is really unbelievably important.
Yeah, so if I could speak to that. So absolutely. Now, it's part of some of my research is that you're absolutely right. Think about that kid that skipped every period, right? Or the kid that came in and like ate lunch, put the hoodie on, went to sleep. Like, that kid is truly struggling. Like, do I want to get on and even turn on my Zoom camera today? Right. Why even get up? Because it doesn't matter. Like, are they gonna have to pass me anyway? Like, there's all these things that kids are going through. And as you said, like, COVID has exacerbated all of the inequities. And it really is astonishing to me when I speak to educators and like, oh, wow, equity. Like you said, these have been here for forever. Let's not act like this is brand new.
Right.
This has been around, but now when COVID happened, everything slowed down, and so now people are really having to pay attention to, wow, that's really happening in these classrooms, or wow, like you said, you have a family of 8 people who are operating on one hotspot in a house, and you're mad because they didn't turn in their assignment. Like, do you know what they're going through? Did you take time to make a phone call or send an email or send a text from a Google Voice number and say, hey, I'm going to check it up on you? And I have to mention this part. SEL is more important than anything right now. And I need people to understand that SEL does not have an age limit. So a lot of times we speak to SEL to talk about kids, but as an administrator, I need other administrators. I need division level people to be checking up on their principals, checking up on their other admin, checking up on teachers. Everybody needs support right now, right? And so it's something that my good friend JT Taylor and I spoke about at one of the virtual ASCD conferences this summer, was that you all know the work about the ACEs and how a lot of times historically marginalized students experience ACEs. Right. And so that work speaks about kids and trauma and things that they've come through and how that truly has an impact towards their education. But something that I kind of looked at when I was looking at ACE is adverse COVID experiences too. That wasn't what the ACE was intended for. But now there's a whole nother layer to the COVID. And I hear a lot of people talking about the educational slide, and kids have been out of school now almost a whole year. What are we going to do? They were already behind before this. Let's be honest. What are we going to do to recover? So I just say that SEL piece, like, you gotta have that piece. And if schools are implementing it, we got to take it to the next level. And if you never heard of it, let's have that conversation, because that's crucial.
Yeah,
absolutely. I think today the statistic I read was that suicide is up 200%.
Oh my God.
And I didn't verify that. I know that's what I read. And So one thing that lots of things you said, you talked about your mission, but that someone needs to care, but like we need to care about all students, not just some students. So if that's it, we have to care, and our job is to reach each and every student, whatever that means, however we're going to. And we're on a tipping point of a huge crisis if we don't figure this out.
Yeah, absolutely. Every kid matters, right? And
everyone
matters.
Everyone.
And then even with the student, like we're talking about specifically students, like what are you going to do to reach all students? And I have to tell you all this, as you know how at the beginning of the year we have SMART goals, and so you tell teachers, okay, hey, create your SMART goals, and let's see what you're going to do for the year. I am that administrator that if you send me a SMART goal and it says I will reach 70% accuracy on the MAP test, I'm sending it back, because this is already telling me you're already preparing for 30% fail.
Yes
So
to that.
What are you going to do to, hey, 100 of my students are going to pass? This is what I'm going to do to ensure that that happens. But we see that all across the nation, you all. We're satisfactory if the 80% or 7% does well. We're okay with the percentage of those kids just not, because they're going to be low anyway. They're sped. Class. That's my excuse for.
I'm sick of my low kids.
Yeah, no. Every kid gets an opportunity to learn, and the thing is, you all, like I was that kid.
Right.
And so if it wasn't teachers, you're right. If teachers didn't take the time to really explain to me why education mattered, and it wasn't necessarily about the lesson, but it was like, this is why this lesson will help me later on in life, you would not know me as Dr. Marin today. Right. So understand that there are a lot more Basils, a lot more Heidis out here to get, and the kids got to know, like, do you care about me? Do you care about what I'm going through? And then later on, I know you are educators. You've had plenty of kids come back, grown, they have their own kids now, and say, oh my God, if it wasn't for you, like I would have made it. Right. And that's what it comes back to, is it's going past your contractual terms to reach kids. Right. And it's about the hard work in order to do the hard work, right? And so that's what I'm gonna be honest with you, Dr. Loney. If you don't even like kids, then you don't need to be an educator.
Right. Why is that?
And we need to be okay with calling that out. I think that's always the struggle too, right? So like as an educator in a building, like being okay with saying, you know what, to a colleague, to a peer, to an administrator, I'm not seeing that respect for student, or that respect for parent, or that, my family, immigrant, first generation, like you, in that sense of, people say, well, they just don't. And I'm like, you have no idea what that just don't is. When you say, oh, they just don't. Well, but you just don't understand where they're coming from, the struggles that they have, the expectations within a family.
For crying out loud, it's not that hard to figure out.
Yeah. And so it's that piece of like how we understand that, how we look for those opportunities to think about, okay, so what is this experience? And then how critical that is before we can even get to the content. Like we feel our content's important, but it's really the least important thing. And particularly with all of the struggles and the stress that's happening right now, that's exacerbated by COVID. That's other, I didn't say that right. By COVID, like we look at those instances and it has to be personal right now. And we're all tired, and we're all, everything comes down to educators right now, right? We were praised in the beginning, and now we're not doing enough. But it's that piece.
Well, we're never going to do enough.
Yeah, we're never, so it's that, how do we take care of ourselves, but how do we take care of the kids who are in our care, that I think is so critical and so important.
Right.
Yeah. Heather, I just wanted to comment. Heather is loving the heart work to get to the hard work. And she says, if they don't work for you, if they sense you don't care for them or don't respect them, they're not going to work for you.
That's right.
So, it's plain and simple. It's not rocket science.
Yeah. Let me be clear. Kids are so critical. Right. And kids have this extra sixth sense of
Mhm.
do you even like me? They can know if you're about some BS. They already know, right?
That's right.
Like, and they
do.
feel that from time to come into the door, right? They can tell when you have other favorites in the classroom, but you don't really fool with them. They can feel that, and kids can sense that, and so that then contributes to their motivation, right? Intrinsic motivation to say, do I want to do this work for this teacher? And sometimes in students' minds, like me not taking your test, me skipping this assignment is hurting you as an educator, right? And I had to tell a student the other day, I said, I got a little secret for you. You not taking that test, that teacher's earning the exact same check.
Right.
Like your only person you're hurting is yourself. Like that's who you're hurting is yourself, right? But in their mind, I'm hurting you, and I'm like, that's not how that works, right?
Right.
So being there for kids and really helping them understand, again, as Heidi was saying, and you were saying, Molly, that they need to understand, like you have to explain the why to them too, right? And so for some educators, like what I will tell you all worked for me is sometimes I had to tell kids my journey. Like, y'all, this is how I became a teacher. But before you knew me as Mr. Marin, like, let me tell you how jacked up I was. Let me tell you how I was running the streets and I was acting a fool and I was doing exactly what you're doing. But I had to get it together. And it takes you off this pedestal for the kid. And you're like, oh, like,
it's so true. You're
perfect too. Like, you got something too. Like, oh, yeah, I got more than you got. Like, believe me. Right? But that's got it together.
Yeah, that's just human nature, though, right? I mean, I don't have unbelievably tragic stories at all either. But when I relate to people on a personal level, and students in particular, it changes the whole way in which the conversation goes from there on in.
Yeah.
And, just sharing of yourself invites kids to share themselves with you. Yeah. If you're willing to trust them with your personal life, then they will also trust you.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Did you say that 2% of educators are Black men? Is that the?
Yes,
that's unbelievable. How can we change that?
Right, and another show.
I mean, obviously he's going to do that, right? He's into recruiting.
But your story being shared is that much more important for you to share. There's,
I would say it's really showing the importance of impact, right? And I would say again, it comes back to that word access. A lot of times, education, people can be gatekeepers. Right. Yeah. So like, let me give you a quick story that when I was in high school, I had a mentor who asked me about the SAT and say, hey, okay, let's start gearing up for college. Do you want to take the SAT? And I was like, I don't even know what that is. And again, my parents are not from this country, so that wasn't the conversation at the dinner table, right? So she said, well, you need to go tomorrow and get this SAT paper work for you to get a waiver to have a test for free. We can start preparing for it. I said, okay, cool. So I go to the school the next day. I go speak with the counselor secretary. She gave me a pass. I came back to the school. Came back to the office during my lunchtime, and I spoke to my counselor. And, we kind of had this small talk, and she's like, "How are you doing?" I'm like, "Great." And I said, "Hey, so I'm here to get the SAT waiver for me to take the SAT test." And she kind of just looked at me, and I'm like, "Yeah, that's why I'm here." And so she goes to get the paper from her desk, and ladies, as she's pulling it out, she says, well, Basil, I kind of really want you to know something else about this. And I said, okay. She said, well, I have a good friend that lives in Northern Virginia, and he makes 6 figures, and he's a manager at McDonald's. So you don't necessarily have to go to college. That doesn't have to be your own option.
Oh.
You all, I
and
was in junior.
Finish the story.
Yeah, so needless to say, I had no other words for her. I said, thank you so much for this paper, and I left. But you got to understand, like, I didn't go into the room fumbling and bumbling and saying, I think that's the paper. Like, I don't really know. I knew what I was asking for. So when you talk about the spectrum, there's kids who know exactly what they need because their parents, went through it and it's a part of their system. Then you had a kid like me who kind of halfway knew because my mentor told me about it. And then you have kids who have no clue. I'm going to be honest with you all. We have people who are teachers, administrators, who are counselors, who are gatekeepers. If you are from the halfway of not knowing till you have no clue, the system is not set up for you to be successful.
Right.
That's what I'm saying. So in order to fix that, we have to fix the system, and there has to be systemic change on saying we want all kids to be successful. You have to have administrators, teachers,
100%.
counselors, and saying like, okay, kids are sponges, and they will rise to the level of your expectation. One of my favorite movies is Stand and Deliver. That was one of the worst classes of the school. He came in there like it was a nightmare. I mean, any substitute, any teacher would have quit 2 days into it and said, I'm good, right? But he stood there, he fought through, and he raised the level of expectations for that class so much so that you've all seen it, that they thought they cheated at the very end because the results were off the charts. That is all about influence, impact, and believing in kids, right? Yeah. So I tell that story to tell you like, I shouldn't be here, right? But you have to persevere. And there's stories that are about kids who stopped and said, you know what, you're right. I don't really want to go to college. You're right. Thank you. And all of a sudden, that's where their story stops. Like, that's not okay. That's
not
what privilege is, and that's gatekeeperness for. I don't think you're worthy of that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
We need more people like you. Can you get some more?
Well, I actually am going to push back on that, Molly. I think that the three of us are equally or more responsible for pushing back on that, because that's the conversation that might have gone to the teacher's room. Oh my gosh, Basil came in and was looking for a thing. I told him this, and we have the responsibility because it's so in our faces. So as having the privilege of being a white person, we've got to call it out of our colleagues so much more. So I appreciate you sharing that story, and you can see our faces like we don't experience that. Or I can only speak for myself. I don't experience that. And so, shame on me if I don't call it out, and I know it's happening in my building.
Absolutely. And so this goes back to my why. Like, this is why I have so much passion, so much conviction about this, because I lived it. I lived it. And so now I'm like, it's my job it's my calling on my life
for
to
sure.
make other kids don't experience this. And if they do, as you said, I got to call it out. So I also had to position myself to be in the rooms where it was happening to say, oh, we're not doing that. No.
Exactly.
We gotta wait a minute. I don't have a parent, and then you have again. It goes back to the spectrum. You have kids who their parents will come in and say, "No, my child's going to Yale. My child's going to Brown. They need to be in this AP or honors level class. And if it doesn't happen, I'm going to superintendent's office." Because our system is the way it is and it's flawed. Guess what? It happens 4 out of 5 times. Who's advocating for that EL kid who went to biology, had no supports, failed it, and now we have them in chemistry? No other supports. Like, that's a setup for failure, right? And that's not even an honors level class. That's just a general class.
Right.
But there's some linguistic barriers that are there. So we got to put supports there, right? And then I can tell you right now, I could go to any school across the nation. Now, let me not say any school. If it's a school that is multicultural and is diverse, right? And it's not just an all Black school or all Hispanic schools, like a charter school, whatnot, but a very diverse school, I can walk through and I can just do kind of a check, and I can tell you what classrooms are honors classes and what classes are AP. And
yes,
absolutely, 100%.
I can tell you. By just looking in there, right?
Yeah,
exactly.
Absolutely.
That shouldn't be the case.
Yeah, in the special ed room, so you can tell which is which, and it's that access to the AP room, right? And so that some of us are never going to know that that's an option, or we've been told that's not an option for us, and so you don't even think to. And then in my case, my parents didn't know to advocate for that, right? So it was the teacher's always right, or the system is always right, and we're just thankful to be here. And, and so we're just versus that, like, advocacy for a seat at that table, and knowing that, like, that the experience for everyone is so much better when you hear other voices around that. And so, like, it doesn't matter if, because I've been on the teacher end of the AP courses, and the experience for everybody is so much greater when you hear other voices versus the same voices that you will continue to hear for the rest of your experience. And how we put barriers to that, I think, is it's a constant systemic piece of how we look at education here in the US. And I mean, even in the system we have right now with COVID happening, parents who will like, no, my kids need to be out, they need to be in, it like doesn't matter.
Yes.
Because and it's not even necessarily for all of the right reasons sometimes. And it's like all of our students are struggling with social emotional issues. All of our educators are struggling with that. But it's the like, this should happen because, but why should it happen for you? And it's not fair that this student who gets more services is there, so that's you're discriminating against my child who doesn't get those services, versus looking at what do we need and who needs what and who has access to other support systems that are not available to everyone. It's just not. And until we really accept that and realize that, we're going to continue to foster this kind of greater divide that's it's chasm-like at this point when we look at who has access to what. And
Heidi, I wasn't going to respond to that, but I have to because kids get tracked from elementary school.
Yes,
so awful.
When we talk about let me talk about special education, because this all goes back to someone's questions about black males and 2%, right? When we talk about special education, you all know there's an over-identification process of minority males being in special ed. That's that federal data. The issue with that is that a lot of times when elementary schools are doing these child studies, and it's a young black male who has a hard time sitting down, and maybe he's behind academically, which there's other research behind kids who go to pre-K are ready for kindergarten and they do well. So a lot of times historically marginalized families don't have the money, don't have the access to even do that. So they're coming to kindergarten, turning 5. There's your first day. Have fun, right? And so what happens is kids who are typically put in special education typically are not also tested for gifted.
Right.
Unless there's an advocate or a parent that knows better, says, no, my kid has an IEP because, they have Tourette's, or my kid has an IEP because they have ADHD, or because they literally have a true disability. And that disability maybe means that they need more time to process, but doesn't mean that they don't know the stuff. They just need more time to process. So they'll say, oh no, it's 3rd grade. We're going to test them for gifted too. It goes back to access. Like, other parents that just don't know aren't going to say anything. And I'm telling you, the schools aren't going to say, I'm going to send a flyer home to let you know that we're doing gifted testing at this time, and we would really love your child to participate. Like, it's almost that VIP ticket that only certain families are getting, you all, right? So then that becomes a systemic issue. And then again, and I don't want special education, because I was a special ed teacher, to listen to this webinar and say, well, he's just bashing special ed teachers. I'm not bashing you, but I'm just saying we know the instruction is not at the highest level in those classes. So those kids have a hard time to grow in those classes. There is growth, but it's not the same amount of growth you would have in a gifted class, right? So then that then follows them, right? And sometimes IEPs can become a crutch. Right. But let me go back to the point about the IEP. We have to understand that academic deficiency is not a disability.
Right.
I'll say that again. Academic deficiencies and you being not able to read or being able to do certain things up to par or grade level is not a disability.
Well, it's a disability of the system.
There it is.
The system failed you.
Do to get that kid together. Doesn't mean I got to give you a whole IEP. I might just say, hey, I got to put some supports in this classroom because several of these kids are failing and are struggling. So what are we going to do to push these kids up? But giving them an IEP is not always the fix. But as a school system, we feel better when we give them support and say, but the only support that we know about is really giving you an IEP.
Right. And how you do that too. I mean, there's kids. My husband's going to kill me, but like, so he was one of those, like, twice gifted, learning disability, but off the charts and other and so when thankfully, I mean, my father-in-law was an immigrant, but was very well educated, and so he pushed for that additional testing. But it like, they never would have known. It just would have been, okay, well, Hispanic boy in special ed, versus like that, okay, well, there is a disability here in the way that we process and learn, but it has nothing to do with
their aptitude.
Yes, with aptitude or ability. And so what do we do? So that's my job then to adjust how I'm teaching so that I can meet the need of that learner in order to try and attach to or highlight the area of strength that exists there. And I think that's, we don't often have all of those instructional pieces, and sometimes within, special ed world, we're generalists, but then we're specialists in some areas of how to reach kids. And so how often do you really truly, in some districts, some, top tier, super well supported districts, you're going to have a co-teacher that's a math specialist and your special education teacher. And so the kids in that school, their access, their ability to have a specialist in a content area plus a specialist in delivering pedagogy in the way that they need is going to be very different than if I walk into Boston or I walk into downtown Atlanta or I walk and what kids will have access to there.
You're so right. And so let me add one more thing to that. So we're talking about, this is really about the academic side, but then on the flip side of the same kind of head of special ed, there's also discrepancies and disproportionality in data and discipline. Right. And that's also federal data. Right.
Yeah.
A black male student is 3 more times likely to be suspended as their a white counterpart. So, and that starts as early as kindergarten. So
yes, you hear about those poor kindergartners on the news.
Yes. So that school to prison pipeline, and again, that's a whole other podcast, but that is
another one.
That is also very serious.
Yep.
And so,
it is.
So for that, I let me say this: I'm from Virginia, and do you all know what data that the incarceration systems, the jail systems, look at to expand their jail systems?
No.
They look at 3rd grade literacy data.
Wow.
If you are in 3rd grade, you cannot read, you got a little bit of a stutter, they're already making a jail cell for you.
Wow.
That is so frightening.
3rd grade literacy data is what they're looking at.
Yeah.
Wow.
They found a correlation. So mathematically, they're like, this is predictive. This is the problem. This is where you came in the bio about disrupting the status quo. So we need to disrupt. So I'm gonna move us. We're just gonna have you back.
No, it seems like we'll never stop talking.
Well, I want to talk about. We've been talking about why it's important, and it is literally life and death in some situations, literally for various of the reasons we've been kicking around. But you have this acronym that you were sharing with us, that's REACH. And these are some steps and some important things that we can all do and learn from you. So if you would walk us through an acronym, that would help us learn how we can continue to be disruptors.
Absolutely. So for the word REACH, the R stands for relationships. And you all, when we talk about being educators, we got to get back to the basics. Like, you have to build relationships with students and allow them to see your heart, allow them to see your philosophy, and allow them to see you as a human. And so even for me, as being an administrator, I tell my teachers the first week of school, I don't want to see any lesson plans about any kind of content. It is straight just relationship building activities, team building activities, you sharing stories about yourself, your students sharing stories about themselves. You're really just doing some team building in the classroom, because that is going to pay dividends for you later on in the classroom. When a kid has a 68 and you're like, man, I really need you to hit that 70. If you have that relationship, you're like, you know what? Okay, I think I'll do it for you. I'll put the extra effort. But if you don't have that connection, that buy-in, kids like, man, I don't even care about math. So why would I? Whatever. I'm used to graduate. I'm out. And so that, or I might not even graduate, right? That's their mindset. So they're not going to, sometimes a kid has to believe in your belief in them before they actually gravitate to that or hold on to that. So that's relationship, right? The E stands for efficacy. And efficacy is very important because a lot of times historically marginalized students will have a very low efficacy about themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And that a lot of times can start at the house. Right. Again, you see the home structure, and again, and there's a lot of students that have both parents, so that's a beautiful thing. But there's a lot of homes where they don't have that, and so a lot of times it's just negativity at home. It could be trauma that they're seeing. They're seeing a lot of loved ones in and out of jail, abuse. They've been abused themselves, and those things really impact them. It impacts anybody, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so when they come to school and then you're behind academically and you hear negative at home and you hear negative about you academically, your self-worth is just the lowest it ever could be. Like, okay, so why am I here? Why am I worth anything? And that efficacy then impacts the motivation to want to do better. Right. So then you might have a kid where you've worked with them, you start building that self-efficacy, and they're like, you know what? Yeah, I am going to go to high school and I do want to go to college. But then you go home and then you have grandma say to you, "Boy, ain't nobody in this family ever went to college. Why do you think you're gonna be the first one?"
Mm-hmm.
And that doubt again to hit you in the face, like, okay, because I was excited about going, but now my family, right, my home structure is not supporting that, right? So sometimes it can be home, and sometimes it can be school, and sometimes it can be both. So you got to remember these students are kind of double dutching sometimes between these worlds and trying to figure out where is my place. So efficacy is huge. So a lot of times that relation, now you can't build efficacy of a student if you don't have that relationship.
Right.
Be clear. You can't come in with the efficacy hammer and say, I got you, come on. And there's no relationship. No one's trying to get it, right? So the efficacy is key. But tied to that is A for attitude. Now I'm here to tell you all, I've worked in several alternative settings. And public settings, right? This attitude, I really call it the hermit crab mentality. These kids have the hardest shells on the outside. I mean, these kids may have seen death. They may, again, family members have gone on and again incarcerated. I mean, they've been truly through life. They might have seen more in their 13 years, and you might be 45 years old, and they've seen more than you've ever seen in your 45 years. So you will never understand the trauma and how that impacts their worldview, right? So this attitude is to push you away because I don't want to get close to you because I don't want to have to care about you. First, if I care about you, you might leave.
Right.
And you're actually the most consistent thing I have in my life. So I don't want to have to deal with that. So I'm pushing you away. But what you have to understand is sometimes, and again, a hermit crab, the actual shell inside is the most gushiest thing, right? Like that's what the kids really are. They want to love you so bad. But I'm pushing you away because that's my mechanism. That's my coping mechanism, right? One of the stories I talk about in my ASCD talk is about the young lady who I worked with in alternative school, and she had been in the alternative school since she was in kindergarten, and I came to her in 7th grade. She had been in alternative school her whole life. But talk about the power of impact of life. This young lady had been in 35 foster homes
Oh,
out of 8 to 5.
By 5?
By 5. So that
Wow.
impacts your worldview and how you trust and love people.
Of course.
So when I felt like I had to tear the world apart, try to get her to build a relationship with me, it wasn't until I got that information that I understood. I get it. I totally get it. So there might be situations like that where you're trying to reach a kid like that. And again, that means you just love harder, right? Because I truly believe every kid can be reached. And this young lady, with the help of myself and a co-teacher, was able to integrate into her public school after I worked with her.
Amazing.
Wow.
And she wrote me this letter that really, I asked her to write a lot of different things in the school or during the school year, and she never wrote anything. She always colored in different things. But on my last day of school, we had goals at the school. So everyone had a goal, and my goal was to become an administrator. So I was in school teaching full time. And the last day of school, she was tearing the classroom up, throwing a chair, acting a complete fool. And I called her social worker and said, listen, you got to come get her. It's a half a day today. I don't have time. Like she got to go. Right. And so the social worker came and got her. But what was crazy was they left. And so after about an hour they left, the social worker called me back. And she said, please allow her to come and give you something because like she is tearing my car up now and she's in tears and she wants to give you something. And I said, okay. I said, sure, you come back. And the school day was over. So she came back. And as soon as she came into the room, she hugged me and she gave me this 10-page handwritten letter that she wrote to me.
Oh.
And it had she was immaculate jar, so she drew a heart on it. And essentially, it was a 10-page letter of her thanking me for all the loving on her. She said, "You're like a dad to me." Every time we get me together, so sorry if I get emotional. But it touched me in a place, you all.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, what an amazing affirmation of your journey and your purpose. And you used the word mission early on, and she just completely affirmed that you are following the path that you were put on this planet to follow. Amazing. I'm so glad she was allowed to come back and give you that letter. She wasn't a gatekeeper. They let her come back.
Yes. So for that, she wrote me a letter, and in the letter, she always joked me about being an administrator. She's like, "You're not gonna be nobody's administrator. You too jokey, and nobody take you seriously." And she always joked with me, right? But in the letter, she said, "Go and be a principal. Be the best principal that anybody can have."
Wow.
Oh my God! Now I'm gonna cry.
I know. Seriously, we're not supposed to cry during this show.
Yeah, we're able to.
Oh my gosh!
It's really to my core.
Look at that.
Oh. Kids, because we can reach them.
Mm-hmm.
So after we reach the kids, you all with attitudes and whatnot, we got to be their champion.
Mm-hmm.
Got to be their champion. And I love the work from Dr. Rita Pearson, because she says be a champion for every child. Every child deserves a champion, someone who believes in them, and they can be the best that they can be. And that's what we have to be for kids. And you won't understand how to be a champion until you know what your why is. Mm-hmm. And why you're pushing for kids to want to do better, right? And after you've been a champion for kids, you then got to give kids hope. It's in the messaging, it's in the posters in your classroom, it's in the words that you use towards them when they get a question wrong. It's when they take a test and they failed everything, but saying, "Hey, we're gonna get this better next time," right? Mm-hmm. It's having those moments of, "Hey, I believe in you." And one of the things that I have a mentoring program called My School Sons. And I say My School Sons, and I give them a label of sons because it takes mentoring to a whole nother level. Because a lot of these young men are looking for something to belong to. That is the reason why they go into gangs. That's the reason why they go into these other negative situations, because they want to feel a part of something. Mm-hmm. And for me, when I say My School Sons, I take these young men who do not fit the traditional mold at all, and you take them to a university. It might be a community college, it might be university, and allow them, you all, just to taste the air, just to walk the sidewalk. Mm-hmm. Allow them to go eat the food at the cafeteria. Allow them to sit into a class, because what you all got to understand is some kids, the closest you're ever going to get to a university is the brochure in the counselor's office. Mm-hmm. Because nobody in my family has done it. I'm scared to death. You're talking about it, but why should I do it? But why am I blessed to have to do that? Why should I, when I have my younger brothers and siblings and no one before me has done it? Why do I have to be the trailblazer? And that's a big burden to carry, you all. And so kids run away from it and say, "Nah, it's not me. I'm gonna get a trade."
It's too big.
And they're not saying a trade is wrong, but
it's
about that hope and that access. So giving kids hope and saying, "Hey," so for me, you all, I'm gonna be very clear. Kids calling me Dr. Marin is not for this facade and all these accolades. It's more so, hey, if I can be Dr. Marin, guess what? You could finish high school. Mm-hmm. Because that's going to be your passport to anything else you want to do. And you can do it.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Amazing. So amazing. Thank you for that. I love that, an acronym. So we're gonna move to wrapping up. I want to talk about your book. Yeah. I'm gonna put the link. I'm going to put it up here, and I'm going to put a link in the chat so people can pre-order. We've all already pre-ordered, but can you talk to us quick about the book so that we know and we can support this?
Yes. So I want to be clear that this is a project that Jeff Kubiak is doing, and he's a phenomenal author. And so with him, you all know his other book about kindness, and it's a bestseller, and it's doing phenomenal things. But he asked me to be a part of this book right after George Floyd's death. And it's a book about kids who do not typically fit the traditional mold, and really about kids who, some of the kids have actual physical disabilities, right? Mm-hmm. There's a student in there that's a female that is from the LGBTQ community, and how that's impacted her life. There's a student in there that's a little bit chubby, and they call her chubby and different things in there, overweight. There's a young lady wearing her hijab and how that impacts her worldview and how people come at her. And then he asked me to be a part of the book, and we were talking, and I was like, okay, like, I could almost have an IEP. So I'm not above that, but I'm like, I don't really understand where I fit in with this book, right? And we started talking, and pretty much it came back to me being a black male is not a disability, and people should not be fearful of me in education because of my skin, or me being a black male in general, right? That if you get to know me, I'm actually one of the biggest teddy bears you'll ever find. It shouldn't be so when you see me go into an elevator with you that you grab your purse and actually wait to get on the next elevator, right? It's different things, but that my skin and my view of world actually is my strength. Right. And so I talk about in there, there's a line about how black male educators, how you grow up and saying you don't want to be a statistic. But I'm a double statistic. Black male educators are only 2% of a teaching force, and now I have a PhD in a group that's only 2% of the world has a PhD. So I became a statistic, but those are statistics for positive change. And so really, how are you going to make impact, and how are you going to make change? So it's a beautiful book. I can't wait for it to be released. But that's what my specific page speaks to is, you all, I want to be an agent of change. I want to be a servant leader. Absolutely. And don't allow my skin or what I look like to have you not engage with me.
Yeah. What an honor to be included in that project, right? What an awesome moment. Well, we have thoroughly enjoyed learning from you, and there's clearly more. There's so much more. We've just scratched the surface, but thank you for sharing your story, and we will continue to support you. We shared your website early on. Let me put it back up so people can pay attention to what you're doing and where you are and follow you. So thank you so much for being with us here tonight.
Thank you so much. Dr. Linda, can you also share my Twitter handle on there? I'm very active on Twitter.
Yep, I can. Let's do that.
I love the followers.
Can you tell me again what it is?
Absolutely. So it's at Basil and then _ Marin.
That is it. Yep.
But I'm sorry, I couldn't put that beside my.
That is. You know what your handle is.
I do, because I've been tagging you. There it is. So go ahead and follow. Absolutely, yes. And we want to grow that network and spread your mission and your message and the lightness that you put into the world. Thank you so much.
Thank you all so much.
We obviously need to have him back. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you all for what you're doing and continue the great work.
Thank you. All right. Take care. All right. Wow. So we're just gonna wrap it up with a reminder about working with us. We're here to support. Heidi, I think just kind of some of the same things we say at the beginning of each show, of course.
At the beginning. So we're happy to help support you. We're happy to help continue this conversation that we had today. So we do that on our Math Together learning community. And that is going to be opening up in January again for new members. And we'd love to have you join us there. And as always, resources, newsletter, etc. at Looney Math. So we hope to see you there.
Awesome.
Yes. And next week we have another amazing guest, Amanda Jansen, who is the author of a book called Rough Draft Math. And she's going to share her ideas about, actually, it includes a bit about equity and how do we get kids engaged in their own learning by using rough draft thinking. So stay tuned for that. She is a friend of ours, and we are going to enjoy having a conversation with her.
Excellent. Thank you, everybody. Take care, and remember to always be kind and always be curious.